Gosh, you know, the film has a lot of messages about happiness, about what comes to mind as things like avoiding unhappiness is not the road to happiness. It also lets us know that it's all of the emotions. In other words, you can't stand a chance at being happy unless you're really prepared to embrace the good and the bad, the dark and the light, the bitter and the sweet, the pain and the pleasure. If you are in a place to embrace all of it, you will be happy, because it's a place of not denying reality. Does that make sense? And then, as Christopher Plummer, as Corman says, we should perhaps concern ourselves not so much with the pursuit of happiness, but the happiness of pursuit, meaning when we're in action, when we're doing something else, happiness will be a wonderful byproduct or side effect. The only other thing I would say is this. I have 3 sons. They're 19, 9, and 8. And I've always said to them, the 19-year-old, our thing has always been, it's nice to be nice. Reggie, it's nice to be nice. And he always used to come back at me with, yes, Daddy, it's nice to be nice. The 9 and the 8-year-old, if I say to them, and I do, what's the secret to happiness, boys? They say kindness. Because I think that's the best I can do. Because it's an action, it's transitive. They can make a plan, they could do something about it. They can phone that person, compliment that person, help that person, whatever. The byproduct will surely be happiness. So that's my answer. One word, kindness. I look at a film and I think, can I do something different with it? And what does it have to say? What's it about? That's the first thing. And the thought of making a film about happiness in a world that has really lost sight of the shore, as it were, a world that's a mess, was very appealing. It was very timely. That's where it came from. I love adapting books. I really do. A lot of it was there. It needed restructuring. The book actually starts with, once upon a time, there was a psychiatrist called Hector who was not very happy with his life. And effectively that meant that you had no Act 1, you had no crisis, you had no conflict. So we started it with who was very happy with his life, so that he was actually in denial, and it could be buried and it could explode, and then there was more propulsion to make that trip around the world. We did lots of things. We upped the love story between Hector and Clara. But we did it because it was thematically right, because we believed that the same wherewithal or tool bag that it takes for having good relationships is the same as for being happy. I don't know if that's a daunting answer or a daunting prospect, but we kind of think that's true. There were lots of dictums, you know, those sayings that come up in the film. There were 7 that we took from the book, and we made up a further 7. Lots of other changes, but the spirit of the book is there. The Tintin-esque fable part of the book really appealed to us, and we embraced that perhaps more than we would normally. It's the story of a psychiatrist called Hector who's dissatisfied with his life, and he's not making his patients any happier, and indeed he's not that happy. He has a perfect life, but it's as if it's kind of preserved in aspic, you know, not going anywhere. He calls himself an armchair traveler dishing out worldly advice. He doesn't feel qualified, so he suddenly decides to go around the world researching what happiness is. And the answers all lead him to one place, but it really becomes clear that he needs to know how he can be happy, not just his patients. Comedy is hard. I think, though, in a film like this, you know, I mean, writing it, you just need to. I love working with Tinker Lindsay, my co-writer, because I feel very liberated, and she laughs because I do all the characters. As we sit there, it's a madhouse sometimes. But I kind of feel I have to do that. You just got to be bold. I mean, I as my mother used to tell me, I have a very strange imagination, and I love to let that run. But in terms of the film and a comedy like this, all the actors, almost without exception, came on board in slightly the wrong mode. They came in to the film in a kind of I'm in a comedy mode. And I used to say to them, no, let's play the simple truth. Let's really play the reality. Because you have to trust that the situations are bizarre enough, absurd enough. I don't want absurd characters in absurd situations. I want real people in an absurd world. And once everyone got that, and they're all really good, the actors, so it was like setting dials, it all started to happen. And if you're going to make a film, coming back to your question about comedy, which has a range in it, you got a dying woman on a plane that really, you know, people get their tissues out at that point. In the same film, you've got pure, ridiculous slapstick from Simon Pegg. To put that all in the same movie, you just have to have a quality control. You should never look like you're reaching for a laugh. Do you know what I mean? So that if you don't get the laugh, it doesn't matter. It's a kind of cool kind of form. It's not as brazenly comedic. Doesn't mean you get less laughs. The opposite can be true, but that's the intention. Oh gosh, fun. The first word that comes to mind is fun. You know, there's a saying in the movie where a character says, basically there's only one question: does this person bring you predominantly A up or B down? Well, Simon Pegg brought us predominantly A up every single day. He's not just funny, he's a fearless actor. He proved to be in this movie. It's extraordinary. He's very kind, and he's a very good, what I call, host. You know, the tone of the set and the shoot, and we're going around the world, all of us, for God's sake, you know. And you kind of, it is set by people like me, but more importantly by the lead actor. And he's just very hospitable in that sense. He's just a lot of fun. You know, I had a really good team. I shook it up for myself. I had, you know, lots of new crew, and I had a designer called Michael Diner, who I just loved. And you really, in that office, it's different to his apartment, which is beautifully chic and well-designed and well-ordered, and you get the feeling that Clara's had a lot to do with that, you know, that everything's in its place. They call themselves tidy, you know. But his office is a place where it can be more his world. And you make lots and lots of very specific choices. The Tin Tin poster, the little toy car, you know, all that, because he is a kid. Hector is a child. I mean, the fact that Simon came on board was the greatest thing that could have ever happened, because he has such a childlike curiosity. Simon's a kid. There's such an up in his beat, you know, and he's got an innocence about him, a naivety. And we reflect in his office his longing to escape and his longing for his childhood, yes. Yeah, the opening scene with his dog. It's a kind of psychological snapshot of who Hector is. It's bizarre, and it's, yes, Tintin-esque. It's Simon with his little dog flying a plane. It kind of says that he's an escapist. He's a child. He's happiest above the clouds, out of reality. His best friend's a dog, which is an unconditional love. That's not going to develop him as a person. Do you know what I mean? And he's running out of fuel. And you kind of ask yourself, how much longer can he avoid the truth? It turns out to be a dream. And actually, if you really want to analyze it, the arch enemy that comes at him from behind and strangles him turns out to be his girlfriend Clara waking him up in the morning. And in psychological terms, she is the enemy because she represents the ticking clock that he's avoiding. You know, it's a fable. It is a psychological fable, and the Tintin aspect liberated us as writers and me as director to be able to go to that place. You know, it's like when they're in the plane to Africa, you cut to the exterior of the plane, and it's a little model plane on strings, and we're shaking it, and there's a picture of Simon at the window like that, you know, just a photo, and then a watering can comes in to represent rain. You know, it's crazy, but it just allows you to go to that place. And all the animations, you know, we made him a doodler so that we could literally animate. I mean, the weird thing is that some of it just comes about from simple cost problems. You know, if you can't afford the exterior of the first plane he gets on to China, then draw it, animate it, costs nothing, you know. But then it just, it makes it playful. And a fable is all about not so much who people are, but what they represent in the hero's journey. You know, so Ying Li in China, you base all those choices on what she represents, and to me, she represents a real web of temptation. And what that means is that when the composer, who is at a bit of a loss as to how to underscore the scene where they nearly, you know, sleep together or make love together, and I said, you've got to see it as Hector getting to the edge of a precipice over which he might fall. So you've got to go dark. And then when he doesn't, because he falls asleep, you go back to the love theme and you lighten it. You know, so it starts to inform all the decisions you make. If you really, and you have to write the characters economically, but you really can go to a magical reality more often than not. It is fun. Rosamund and Simon had just come off The World's End, which was a gift to me as a director because their chemistry was just fantastic. Really fantastic. You know, you just believed they were a couple. Whatever is supposedly, seemingly wrong with them as a couple at the beginning of the film, I felt when we were writing the screenplay that we really wanted to establish that they really can laugh together. There's no better, more economical way of telling an audience that there is something about these guys that should be together if they can laugh that much and that stupidly, and that was very easy. It was hard. I mean, I'm not going to pretend it was easy going around the world. You know, I found myself saying that the writing of this film changed me and my co-writer. I mean, it really did, because we had to look to ourselves and we were writing and dealing with happiness as an issue, you know. And then I say that the going around the world just made me grumpier, you know, because it was, I'm only half joking, but it was really, really, really tough. And there's nothing more bonding than going around the world with a core 14 group and coming across endless disaster after disaster. And in this case, and it's never happened to me as much before, always falling upwards. It was weird. I'm a very positive person. I hate negativity when I'm making a film because it is hard enough. You know, I can't bear it. It is the hardest thing in the world to do. So I'm a problem solver very, very quickly. If something goes wrong, I'm the first person to leap at it and say, no, I've got an idea. Well, instead, we'll do this and we'll replace it with that. We can pick that shot up or whatever. And actually, I get my most creative in the face of those problems. I mean, I'm loath to say it because it's like I'm saying to studios, give me less money and give me more problems, you know. But it was bonding, very bonding. I don't know so much that it would be where I would go, but it would be with whom, and that would be my family. I came out of the going around the world adventure, and to be honest, when I got back to Los Angeles, and I've lived there 18 years, and friends say, what's it like to be back? I did find myself saying proud to be an American, because I am an American as well as British. And what I meant by that was, I don't know, there's a certain relative, I use the word carefully, there's a relative safety to being in America. To me, my idea of a happiness journey is getting in a car with my family and touring America or Europe. In other words, having the fine detail of the journey, not necessarily covering as many miles like a checklist, but really exploring one place for 10 days. Do you know what I mean? It's not about overdoing it, it's about doing it in detail, I think. Christopher Plummer is the only actor that I've ever worked with, other than Charlton Heston, who would come on the set an hour and a half early and say, come on, let's go. I have to leave at 4. I mean, really, there are so many leaves that actors could take out of his book, you know. He's so professional. He's so in control of his lines, and he's studied them and studied them and studied them, you know, and he's just a joy. And inventive, you know, and he did the film because he loved the screenplay, so you get a really good, different type of commitment. You know, he did 2 days only with us, and we crammed everything in those 2 days. Gracious and very talented. You know, Toni Collette plays Agnes, Hector's long-lost love and ex-girlfriend, after whom he thinks he kind of yearns. You know, and she represents in the film the message about nostalgia, because I believe that nostalgia is something that stops us being happy. I think there's good nostalgia and bad nostalgia, but I think living in the past and honestly kidding yourself that it was better then, I've done it all my life and it's a problem. It stops you enjoying the present and the future. And I think, and she, in her argument, I mean, she really lays into him and has that thing about, you know, you put me on a pedestal and I'm better than that fantasy because I'm real. I had a baby, then another one, and I'm having another one, you know. And she says, do you think I wanted it to be Hector there cutting the umbilical cord? No, because Hector would have fainted, then thrown up. And she calls him emotionally squeamish. So she really is an important role. You kind of want Hector, before he goes into the experiment at the end in happiness, you want him to feel like he's walking to the gallows and that his life is over. She just handles those words so well as the co-writer, sitting there and hearing those words come back at me. It was really gratifying. I love to laugh. You know, I mean, I am really stupid, and when I work with people and I say that is so silly, and they look a little worried, and I say, no, you have to understand, silly is good. I've always been like this. I just love to laugh.